Hello, everyone. This is the Backdrop weekly or fortnightly outreach meeting for Thursday, August 18th. As is our practice, we will go around the room with each person introducing themselves and then picking the next person to introduce. I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altadena, California. And I'll pass the baton to Sarvashri.
Hi, my name is Sarvashri. I'm in Walnut Cove, North Carolina, and I'm interested in getting new users and inexperienced people to look at Backdrop. Let's see, let's go with Martin.
Hi, I'm Martin in United Kingdom, Yorkshire Pudding on the internet. Look after the LinkedIn page, and we're seeing quite a bit more activity on there at the moment, which is good. And we'll go to Jen.
Jen Lampton joining from Oakland, California. Very excited about the activity happening in general about Backdrop right now. There's a lot of articles and podcasts and other neat stuff. Twitter conversations, Drupal camp stuff. So yeah, it seems like everybody's talking about it right now, which is fantastic for outreach. Let's see, that's it. Back to you, Tim.
Yeah, and I'm Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim in Deerwood, Minnesota. And yeah, excited about the same things that I think Jen is, that just a lot of interesting conversations going on right now. So anxious to see where that goes, and also some upcoming events. Yeah, so let's jump into it. I'm looking at the agenda. I'm going to scroll right down and talk about the what's relevant now stuff. And let's just take these in order. CiviCRM update. I'm pretty sure I saw some stuff whiz through my inbox from Robert about updates. Robert, what's going on?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with a sort of apology that not much happened for a couple months, but I finally was able to shake loose time to come back to this. So I've updated CiviCRM to the current version on our beta site and worked through the process for integrating, which meaning getting records that are currently in Backdrop user accounts into CiviCRM and getting those records linked up. And Civi, so that's what I'll talk about. I have posted a brief summary of what's the situation and a comment on the relevant issue in CiviCRM. And I'm just going to throw that link into the chat in case anyone here wants to follow along. The way it breaks down, to start with, the first question is, what fields do we move from Backdrop user accounts to CiviCRM? And when we talked about this a couple of months ago, we said basically almost the bare minimum, as we could add fields later on as we want to. And the absolute minimum would be just the full name field. But since we also collect location data in the user account, CiviCRM collects addresses, we could also move over all of the location fields from Backdrop to CiviCRM. And what I've written up is effectively doing that. So we'll collect full name, email address, street, city, state, zip, and country. And then the process of syncing has two parts. First is to create CiviCRM contacts for all Backdrop user accounts. And CiviCRM provides a command to do that. So that's really easy. It doesn't copy any fields over other than just creating contacts and linking the user accounts. But there was a little glitch that I described in there, which is because we have something like 5,000 user accounts, the vast majority of which are spam accounts. But we don't know which. So if we move them all over, the Civi CRM command to create user accounts isn't a batch process command. It's just load a web page that does this, and so it times out way before you get through the list. And after some playing around, I found a way to make that happen, which is to tinker with the max execution time in php.ini and then run it as a drush command, because the Civi CRM command still sets a timeout, even if you have a long PHP document. But so that works. Drush command creates all 5,000 accounts or contacts linked to the user accounts. And then the next thing is to get all the fields from the user accounts. And way to do that was something suggested by Jen a couple months back, is to create a view that contains all those fields, export the view as a CSV file. And then Civi CRM has a contact import process where it can import, and you can tell it to update, to use that import data to update existing contacts, which is what we want. We don't want it to create brand new contacts. So, and that is a batch process. But when I was doing it on my local, it still timed out during some of the steps. But by patching this batch size within Civi CRM down to a smaller number, the individual batch steps didn't time out, and that got all the way through. So that's a process. I've done this on my local. The reason I haven't done it on beta because I wanted to make sure that that the fields I listed, email and location, email, full name, and location, that we all kind of agreed those are the ones we want to get into Civi from the get-go. So I didn't want to do that on the beta site until people, all those with an interest, had a chance to say yes or no or something different. I will, and I'll come back to that in a sec, but I want to just run through two other potential important issues. One is permissions. We had said we wanted to create a Civi admin role, and we'll need to give that role, I think, all permissions to do everything within Civi CRM. It doesn't currently, so that's just a matter of checking the page of infinite checkboxes. But the question arises then, currently the developer role has a lot of Civi admin permissions. And the question is, should we keep those cleanly separated? And so take away the special permissions from developer role, the Civi CRM permissions from developer role, or should a developer already have all of the Civi permissions? And so that's kind of an open question.
I think we should probably leave all permissions for the developer, because developers currently the admin role, so they are going to assume that they get all permissions, and if they get in there and they can't do something that could be confusing, I think they would have permission to be able to give themselves permission if they needed it. But I think it would probably be cleaner if we just said developer is always everything. And if you're a developer, you're going to have access to that database to do whatever you want anyway. And so there isn't really any increased risk by giving them more Civi access. So we trust our developers.
Okay. There's one other issue that's just kind of a UI unfriendliness. Civi CRM Civi CRM creates a profile that puts those fields we're collecting, full name and location fields, on the user registration page, which is great. So we'll automatically collect that from the records. The interface for editing that information is a little awkward, because the profile has its own separate edit page, and on the beta site, it puts it in the admin theme. So you just get this little block for that page that, and the only way to get to it's not a sub tab of the user edit page, which we kind of expect. And in fact, on City CRM sites, I've got it configured to do that. So we kind of need to figure out how to make editing your own address and name information easy to discover for people.
Yeah.
But I'd suggest maybe if we go ahead and get it on beta, then people can kind of kick the tires and experience it, and then say, oh, yeah, we just do such and such, and this is how we fix it.
I think it probably won't be very hard to make it render in the front end theme if that's what we want. I'm not sure that's what we want. We should look at it first and see what it does.
So the current user edit page renders in the front end theme.
Yeah.
So it just felt like both user edit pages ought to be in the same theme.
Yeah, totally agree. And then, I think once we have it on the beta site, we'll probably throw some front ender at it to make sure that it sort of matches what we expect. And we could probably also add like another link, like actual, like edit your contact information or something like that link to get to that page if we don't think the tab interface is clear enough. I think we removed tabs from edit pages on backdropcms.org. So yeah, we'll have to do something.
Okay.
Yeah, that might be why they're missing. And you're like,
Okay.
Yeah.
So is everyone cool with the fields to move over? Email, full name, and location?
Yeah, I think that's great.
Okay, then I'll do that over the next couple of days.
Great. Thank you.
All done.
Okay, great. Thanks for that update. And you got everything you need then, Robert, to move forward?
I did. I'm not gonna like start typing right now because I know we have people who watch on YouTube and might have some input. So I'll give it a few hours at least to get any offline input. But yeah, then
Okay. Anybody on you? Yep. Anybody on YouTube, go ahead and type your input into Zulip. Or wherever. Okay. So it sounds, we'll be getting this on the beta site then soon, it sounds like.
yes.
And we'll be able to, great. Okay, so I saw Gogo pop in for a minute and I quickly added graphics to the agenda, but Gogo's no longer here. So we'll skip over that. And we didn't get to use his graphics for the last Backdrop Live, but we're getting close enough to the next one that it would be good to start talking, see if we can get, could somebody, Jen, could you go on Zulip or something to just make sure he knows that this isn't the outreach meeting? He might have thought he dropped into the wrong meeting. Anyways, I'm also, I'd just like to I'd like for us to use the work that he already put into these graphics and make sure we use them. We still haven't done that. So we'll skip over that and let's go to Backdrop Live itself and talk about just a couple of things. I don't want to spend too much time on it because it's still early and we have a lot of other things to talk about today. But I don't think we a couple of weeks, 2 weeks ago, I believe, we talked about pushing the date back a week later. So it would be 2 weeks after Bad Camp rather than 1 week, right? And we were just going to give folks a week to offer any feedback on that. We brought it up during the dev meeting. I think we brought it up in Zulip and on in the forum, and nobody has given any feedback. So let's just, I think we can call that an official, right? And we can set our dates for, I'm looking them up. Okay, September, October.
14th and 15th.
When is
Right.
Bad Camp?
No. Oh yeah. Hold on.
Unfortunately, I have two different calendars, and this one doesn't have Bad Camp on it.
Bad Camp is 6th through 8th.
Okay. So then we were going to do it the 14th and 15th, and I think we put it off till the 21st and 22nd.
Okay.
Okay. So I would like for us to get this live as quickly as possible. That's it's only 2 months off. Barely 8.5 weeks off, or 9.5, I don't know. And let's get our registration live as quickly as we can. Jen, if there's anything you can do to help with that, that would be great. I think we've discovered now that we've got the process down, and it should only take a few minutes, I think. Well, a few minutes might be, but less than half an hour probably we could have the registration live. We have had some conversations with the Software Freedom Conservancy about we're going to do the same registration process, is I guess what I was going to get at. So that we have been doing, which is not the perfect system for us, but it's the best we have for now in terms of handling the money. What else about that? Well, yeah, just with all the buzz and the articles and stuff right now, it would be really great to get people thinking about Backdrop Live right now. And did anybody else have any other important thoughts about Backdrop Live that they want to talk about today? Or I have some things, but I think I'm going to let them wait because there's other things on our agenda that are probably more pressing today. Okay. Not hearing anything else.
I think the only thing which I don't know if we want to look at, that has been discussed before, that the thought that Backdrop Live seems to mainly attract, and that a lot of the sessions are mainly geared towards people who have already got started in Backdrop. And do we want to consider any kind of mini here's an introduction, and I don't know exactly what that would like, but that's the only thing I thought worth mentioning about
Sure.
Backdrop Live.
Sure. I've been thinking a lot about that too, and actually some of the things I wanted to mention that I thought I would wait on have to do with that. And that's, I think, one of the ideas we brought up in this meeting before is maybe doing like a beginner 3-hour block that's scheduled in advance, that's really targeted at beginners, that's and have that sort of pre-scheduled and get that on our schedule quickly, especially far out, so that because I mean, I think if we want that to work, we need to give people time to find it, and also hopefully get people interested. I mentioned a little further on in the agenda right now, the Drop Times seems to be interested in us. Maybe we could send them a press release about a introduction to Backdrop sessions, see if they would cover it. We had talked about in the past advertising with the email newsletter, what's that, the weekly drop, and there were some issues with that might be resolved, and it might be that we should go back and try that again, promoting Backdrop Live there. So we have a few promotional opportunities, and if we had like a real beginner track or session or block scheduled in advance, I think that might really help us bring in new people. I don't know that we need to make I'd like people to think about that. I'm happy to talk to people about it, and maybe we put that on our agenda for 2 weeks from now to try and nail that down. How does that sound, Martin? Okay, I'm not looking at the screen. Did we lose Martin? Martin left. Okay. Anything else on Backdrop Live? There may be some overlap with Bad Camp, which is the next thing I have down. Jen and I had a meeting with Irina earlier in the week to talk about Bad Camp and Backdrop at Bad Camp. And Irina is doing some direct communicating with the Bad Camp team to find out about some opportunities for us to participate there, maybe do some sprinting at or around Bad Camp. Now, I want to acknowledge that there's been some concern about whether or not some of us are ready to attend big events. And so in Bad Camp, I think is a live event. I don't know that they're planning a virtual component to it, but that doesn't mean that if we did some sort of sprint that it couldn't also be at Bad Camp, that it couldn't have a virtual component to it. Anyways, these are preliminary sort of talks. So there's not too much to report there other than that there's some possibility of us like having a dedicated sprint or something at Bad Camp. And the proposal is that might focus on the upgrade process and making the upgrade process a little bit easier from Drupal, including building sort of a UI component for bringing the database in. That's sort of where some of that that's a particular interest of Irina's and why she's interested in help schedule this. Sessions are open till my understanding is August 22nd, which is just 4 days away. And I had been not planning to submit a session before, and now I'm thinking about it a little bit based on this idea if there is a stepped up presence or if we have more going on around Bad Camp, maybe it would be worth me trying to get out there. I'm not ready to make a commitment yet, but is anybody else here thinking that they would be going to Bad Camp or would be interested? It's a long ways for you, Sarvashri.
Well, I'm curious how Jen's presentation in Colorado was received. I watched it. It was really great. I thought she did a fantastic job.
Thanks.
And, wanted to see, if that presentation opened some eyes, or if maybe people had come to you for other presentations, like Bad Camp, if you might want to do that. Just wanted to get your feedback on what kind of feedback you got.
Sure.
Yeah. So I thought the Colorado format was really interesting, where it was like a Ask Me Anything section where people submitted questions ahead of time. And then there was a moderator there who went through the questions and asked them sort of as they coincided with what I was saying, which I thought she did such a good job of doing that. But
did you have the questions in advance, you're saying?
I had a few of them. Not all
Okay,
of them were
not
submitted, but I got a couple days before time. They were like, this is what people have asked. So I at least had some warning as what was coming.
Sure.
But I think there were a couple that were squeezed in the last minute that I didn't know. But yeah, I thought it was really good. I have also gotten a lot of feedback from people in the Drupal community who hadn't seen Backdrop in a while and were kind of pleasantly surprised that everything was still chugging along and that more people were adopting it and everything. And then a couple of new people who said that they were really impressed with like the thought that we put into like the audience and the experience and stuff for Backdrop, which I thought was really great. Because it's like, yes, that's why we're here. We had to think about it long and hard if you're going to do something as crazy as forking Drupal. So yeah, I thought that was good. I think I would be open to doing something similar at other camps. I haven't been approached by anyone to do it. But one thing that I thought was really compelling about the Drupal Camp Colorado experience is that they had a Q&A with Dries first thing in the morning, and then they had a Q&A with me halfway through the day. So it felt kind of like they were like comparing the two like founders of two platforms, which I don't know, it felt really great for me to be like, oh man, look at me, I'm up here next to Dries with the same format, which was fun. And I think that in order for that to happen at some other camp, it might be and this could be an interesting idea for someone else to propose too. Like it doesn't have to come from me, but some kind of a like panel where you could have like a bunch of people and ask them all the same question rather than having like distinct sessions with different questions. So that could be fun if you had like WordPress, Drupal, Symfony, Backdrop, whatever. And you could say like, how do you feel about Composer or whatever, and see the different projects, different opinions on stuff like that. Could be kind of fun. So yeah, that would be cool. I think it would also be really interesting for people who are, don't know anything about Symfony, right? Or don't know anything about Backdrop, who do only Drupal, to see how different projects approach it. Mm-hmm. About attending Bad Camp, I'm sort of on the fence too. Like, I don't really know What their capacity situation is going to be like. I'm not really sure about the venue, if they're going to be able to support like remote participation. They're still working all of that out. But I would love it if they could do this as a hybrid event where, you know, the people who want to be in person, who can travel and are comfortable, can do it. But the venues they're using aren't very good at high capacity. And I'm concerned about
Sure.
Health and safety of people near and dear to me if I put myself in that situation. So we'll have to see how they're going to handle that, especially because Bad Camp's usually really highly attended, and we don't know this year if it's going to be highly attended or not. But if they are, and then they're in a small venue, it could be really problematic. So yeah, I'm sort of on the fence about wanting to attend in person. I might find some way to meet up with some people who are there without having to see everybody at the
Right.
camp. But yeah, I'm curious to see what other options we might have for remote participation, which I think would be good. So TBD.
Well, I agree that a lot may depend on the details that come out and also what kind of response Irina gets in terms of whether we do something. We certainly doing something ourselves virtually around a bad camp, if it makes sense, makes sense. On the other
Yeah.
hand, given that we have like especially the sprint, right? But given that we have Backdrop Live 2 weeks later, I don't think we need to go out of our way to create an event, a virtual event around a bad camp, only to the degree it makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll keep that in mind. So I don't know. I mean, I'd like us to start thinking about like what are some good sessions for events like Bad Camp. And the other big event, Sarvashri asked about Jen's presentation at Colorado, Drupal Camp, Colorado. The other, and Jen mentioned Dries. So Dries's talk got us a little more attention than Jen's, even though in a smaller way. In that Dries was asked about Backdrop and actually took some time to have a, not a longer answer than I expected, in which, and most of you probably seen this, he sort of acknowledged Backdrop. He was very friendly, a little dismissive. He basically, if I paraphrase, said, yeah, Backdrop was a useful thing. They had some points. We learned some things from them. But, he sort of implied we've got it figured out now. And I don't think he went so far as to say we don't need them, but it was sort of implied there. But out of that came, but he did say, I think the big thing for me was him saying, oh yeah, well, Backdrop comes to DrupalCon and they present there. And Jen and I both sort of said, what? That's news to us. But if Dries thinks it's happening, that's a good thing, because that means it could happen, right? Even if it isn't. And that opened up some discussions about us, actually being at DrupalCon in the future. And has led to some discussions with the DA in which they have sort of acknowledged and confirmed that we're welcome there. And I think even opened the door to further collaboration. So between those two talks and that was 2 weeks ago now, wasn't it? Yeah. I think those two talks certainly generated some buzz. And it's something we should try to leverage, I think, for our next. It's part of why I want to get Backdrop Live, registration open quickly. Is so right now while there's talking. The other thing, Sarvashri, if you haven't seen this and anybody else, the Drop Times has taken an interest in this whole Backdrop. They actually, I think, promoted the Q&A before, if I'm correct, before it happened. They sort of covered. They did a big story on Dries's acknowledging Backdrop as part of the family, and then they did another story on the Are We Welcome at DrupalCon, and I think, like, for example, if we were to announce some kind of session or element like the Drupal Classic session, but not the same thing, we would do something new. But if we were to announce something at Backdrop Live, which might be carrying on this discussion, that we might get some press from them, which could be really helpful. I don't know how widespread the Drop Times is, but it's anyways, they're interested in us right now for some reason. So maybe because it's a little controversial. They're hoping it'll drum up some viewers. Anybody have any questions about all of that or thoughts? Okay, well, I'm inclined to submit a session to Backdrop Live or Bandcamp with the knowledge that I could still, one, it might not get accepted because I think, and two, that I could always decline if even if it does, because I'm not quite ready to make that commitment. But I would encourage, if anybody else is in that position, just know that it's 4 days till the deadline unless they postpone that, and it would be nice to at least get some sessions submitted so we have that possibility. And we should, please be thinking about how we could, if there's any opportunities to connect Bandcamp and Backdrop Live to sort of follow up. If we are just 2 weeks later, if there's something we can do during Bandcamp to promote Backdrop Live, that's something we should be thinking about. Okay. Back to you, Jen. How about an update on Open Source Day?
Sure. So we are an official Open Source Day project. I think we've submitted all of our information to them. We did get one email today. Just check real quick.
Early on, I think I saw something about them wanting a video. Do you know anything about that?
They did say if we had time or availability, they would love video clips to use for their like social media advertising. So it wasn't, they didn't want anything big. They just wanted a Backdrop CMS is happy to be part of Open Source Day. And then that sort of, would be a good thing to use. But it wasn't required, so I didn't prioritize it.
Sure. It's fair to not prioritize it, but as somebody who's done a little bit of video stuff, I'm still intrigued by pulling something together if we have time.
Yeah.
But not no priority. Go ahead.
I have I also attended their info session, which was basically like if you're a future project and you had any questions for any organizers, it sort of gave you a half hour to talk to them about it. I didn't really have any questions, and because we've done this for several years in a row, they called on me first. They're like, let's go around and introduce yourselves. Jen, you've done this before, go first. And I was like, oh, hi, yes, I've done this before. And everyone else was doing it for their first time. And so they had a bunch of questions like, how many people are we going to get, and what are we responsible for teaching them beforehand, and what are they going to know when they arrive? And it was, the same questions that you're probably going to have every time. We don't know who we're going to get. We don't know what they're going to know when they arrive. But yeah, the kind of stuff you have to sort of figure out during sprint day. Yeah, I mentioned our tugboat preview process for QAing things, and there are a bunch of other teams that had similar processes that are like, oh, we hadn't thought about using that for a sprint day, so that was kind of nice that we got to offer something rather than just learning things, which is neat. But yeah, I think we're all set. Open Source Day itself is going to be on, the 16th of September, which is the day after our release. Okay. So that should be exciting. We'll have a lot of people fixing bugs if needed immediately after the release. Hopefully not fixing unrelated bugs or improvements in various places, which will be fun. And that's part of the Grace Hopper celebration, which is a larger event,
right,
that is happening. Well, registration is closed, so you can attend now if you wanted to. A hybrid event, both in Florida and online, September 16th through 23rd. So it's 5 days of stuff.
Okay. Good. Is there so anything else other than if some folks have time? Well, I'm just thinking what are the to-dos, and one would be a video if we can, not priority. We should look into exactly what they're looking for there. Although I could also envision creating, we have some nice blog posts that we've used in the past. I could envision having a video available if there were some specific questions or things that we thought would be helpful that people could watch on their own to help them get started. That might be a way to address. Yeah, I think the blog post might be better, probably better than that. But is there anything else that like that we could prepare? One thing, it would be a little bit of triage in the issue queue to make sure we've got some good issues that are good for beginners. Last year we had that accessibility audit right before Open Source Day. I think a number of those issues are still open. If anybody, does anybody have any other ideas of things that would be good? And even, go ahead.
I went through the user experience tag and found a bunch of little tiny stuff that didn't have the good first issue label on it. So I threw those on recently, but it might be good to review the ones that already have the label on them and make sure they are actually good first issues.
Right.
Because I tend to throw that on there before I look at the code and then look at the code and go, oh, never mind. This is really different than I thought it was going to be. Right. So yeah, maybe I'll spend some time doing that.
Okay, is there anything else you can think from our experience in the past? So one, I just want to bring this up, that this discussion with, and there was this guy not at the last Backdrop Live, the Backdrop Live before, and I'm apologize for forgetting his name, but he has this tool which really lets you spin up backdrop sites in the cloud with a text editor and immediately there. And it would be, I think, a really convenient and useful tool for something like this kind of online sprint. And I was having some conversations with him about using it for things like Open Source Day, and then I got sidetracked, and it's been several months since I've talked to him. I think I should follow up on that, because if we could get that working, and if he's still willing to work with us, that could be a really helpful tool, because it's really a push button and you've got a live working backdrop site with a repo and a text editor all in the cloud. And my brief experience was it worked pretty good. Both Irina and Justin worked with this tool, so and seemed positive about it. I'll try to find time to follow up with him on that. Just a little bit embarrassed because I kind of ghosted him before. Anything else around Open Source Day? That could lead into Hacktoberfest, which could be a broader topic. I mean, we spend a fair amount of time talking about how to bring new users into Backdrop. We talk less about how to bring new contributors in. Other than when we talk about like Open Source Day or the other, and I'm forgetting the name of it, the other recent sort of hackathon that was several weeks long that we participated in, Open Force, right? Is that right? Sound right to people? The Open Force event I thought went pretty well, and Hacktoberfest would be another one of these. For those of you who aren't aware of it, I mainly am aware of it from Twitter. During the last couple years, during the month of October, I think DigitalOcean has sponsored this big event where they give out like little prizes to people who submit contributions to open source projects. Any open source project can, I think any open source project, I think, can participate. And they have like a calendar of hackathons that happen during October. And I thought that participating in this might be helpful to us if we connected it to, like, if we hosted a hackathon, a sprint day during October and promoted it on their calendar. But I just Googled it and I'm not seeing any firm indication that it's happening this year. Their website seems to be still from 2021. So if anybody sees any news about Hacktober, the last 2 years, I keep thinking that we should try to get involved in that, and then I just get distracted and I forget to bring it up, and then it's passed. So if anybody knows of any other events like that, let us know. Okay, Um, The last thing in this part of the agenda is the media contact list that Sarvashri started. I don't know if you just shared that with me or if you shared it with the whole group, but I think we just need to kind of look at that. Sarvashri, do you want to give us a quick summary of what you did and what the next steps are? Is Sarvashri still there? Yep.
I created a Google document and shared it with you, and you can share it as you see fit.
Sure. Okay. And the kinds of, what were the kinds of things you listed on
I have to try to remember.
that?
There were,
Trying to find it quick.
yeah, I don't have it up in front of me. I wish I did.
Okay.
But there
Well-
were several groups
Mhm.
and review locations and other competing CMSs, which where you could compare different CMSs together and see how they compared. And
Okay. Well, we have,
mostly review sites.
okay. We have a very old issue that sort of lists some, that started to list some organizations that we should, update whenever we have releases or important news. And I think what Sarvashri has done is an opportunity to maybe build that list and make better use of a list like that. I need to take a look closer at the list. And I think we need to do a little better job of reaching out to some of these other groups about what's new in background land. And as I put on the agenda, we should make sure that we are reaching out to the drop times, I think, with announcements, since they have been curious about us.
If we had a couple of people that were focused on outreach to the exclusion of everything else, not trying to keep everything going, but just a real focus on outreach, that would be a useful thing. People with marketing skills. We're missing, who are we missing? It usually is here. A couple of marketing types.
Absolutely, Sarashri. We just need to figure out how to better recruit and retain those kinds of volunteers that want to do that work. So if you have
Luke.
ideas on that.
I'm thinking of Luke and
Sure.
his cohorts.
Yeah, Luke, come back to us. We miss you. Speaking of the last few minutes here, under our things to do, we have this list of social media, blog posts, newsletter. I was going to ask Martin to say more about what's been happening on LinkedIn, but he apparently had to leave. Twitter's been a little bit busy lately, but a small bleep following the Colorado Drupal camp. Nothing too dramatic, but as usual, if anybody has announcements, things that we can promote on social media, let us know. Having material is helpful to feed the social media beast, I guess. We haven't been pushing this lately, but we used to regularly ask for people to write blog posts. I'm gonna pitch that again. One particular thing that's come up recently is that there's been talk over the years of a blog post on how to write, how we built our forum, sort of a step-by-step process on how to do that. It would be really great if somebody had the time and the inclination to help us either on your own for your own blog or for the Backdrop blog to write how to build a forum. And I think the focus here was on doing it with, the way we did it with backdrop.org as an alternative to the forum module. There's a reminder to we should probably get our newsletter out. Actually, the save the date for the Backdrop Live would be a good lead story in the newsletter. If anybody wants to work on that, let me know. And then maybe lastly, dashboard notifications. Help me come up with, before we leave today, we haven't done a new dashboard notification for a while. What is something going on right now? I wonder, would a link to, I don't know if we don't usually do stuff like this, Jen, but would like a link to your interview be something worth putting on the dashboard?
Sure. I mean,
We haven't done something like that before, which might be a good reason to
Yeah.
try it.
we could also do something maybe a little bit less explicit and like link
Mhm.
to the mentions section or something like that and be like, Backdrop has been all over the news lately. Check out. And then in there we
Mhm.
have, articles and other stuff too, so that it sort of spreads the focus across all of the stuff that's going on.
We did not put, I don't think we got your interview or Dreese's interview in the mentions, which I think we should.
Okay.
I added a bunch of other mentions. I added the articles that the drop times did. I added this Jan Polzer. I think, well, no, I'm not gonna. He did an article on how is Backdrop CMS in real life compared to Drupal.
Yeah.
Somebody else did a why migrate from Drupal 7 to Backdrop. Canna Patrick did that article. And I did link to the video that Atten Design did on navigating next steps for your Drupal 7 site, in which they talked about various options, including Backdrop, Drupal, and WordPress. But I didn't do yours and Dreese's, so we could add those. Yeah. If anybody else knows of any other mentions, I do every week or two. I try to do a Google search for any new content on Google or related to Backdrop, and I find stuff that way. Yeah. Take a look at the mentions to see some of what I've been finding. Okay, I think we should wrap this meeting up. Anybody have anything else? Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'm gonna